How's everybody doing today? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish. And for those that think we sit and tie flies because we want to catch more fish, you're correct. And then there are some that think we sit and tie flies because we're having fun. You're also correct. And today I'm going to show you how to combine those two. Alright, so in the vise today we have a slick little Ahrex FW555. And this is their barbless jig hook, and this is size 10. The 554 will include the barb on there, but we don't need that barb. We're going to pinch it anyway. So to get this started, I've got the 5.5 millimeter Spawn football bead there in the color black, and now I'm adding some weighted wire wraps, and this is size 0.015. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 wraps. Why 10? Just because. So if you want to use 9, have at it. 8, whoa, getting crazy, but it would still work. So after we trim those ends, just round them over, because of course we have a dedicated curved scissor just for our wire trimming. And as far as, you know, investments in your fly tying go, I think $2.99 will get you done for that, and you preserve the life of your regular scissors for a long time. The more you know. Alright, so spin that bead so that the bulk is under, because that's going to help keel this hook properly. Alright, so that's why 10 wraps of the weighted wire. As you can see, I don't have a ton sticking out, but it's going to hold that bead in place just fine. Got some 50 denier black thread here from Veevus, and it's kind of become my new obsession. And speaking of new obsessions, I don't know how much of this you can see, but this is not my usual vise. Tying on the Stonefo Elite, and it is some kind of amazing. I'm not saying you need one, I'm saying you probably need two. Alright, so let's cover those weighted wire wraps up a little bit, and then we can really get to business here. Alright, nothing's moving on me now. Great. So what we're going to do here is kind of a deconstruction of the Prince Nymph. And this is a fly I've fished for a few years now. And as far as, you know, those odd days when fish just aren't reacting to what you think they should be reacting to, this is a fun one to throw as an alternate sort of attractor pattern. So with the 50 denier, it's a little bit more difficult, but I'm building just a slight thread bump right there at the end of the straight portion of our shank. And why I'm doing that is because we're going to be using Biots in tying this fly. So with that little bump, much like if you were tying a clump of mallard flank, when you hit that bump and the tension comes against it, it splays those fibers for you. Well, that's going to do the same thing on our split tails. It will just keep them from crossing over or getting too narrow. As far as length, I'm looking just past half a body length for my tails here, which, you know, nothing crazy, but it helps if you have a predetermined idea of how long you want your materials to be, especially when it comes to tails. So, as you can see, I'm going to get right back to that bump, tie it down, and it's angled. And what happens now is, as I come up, you'll see on the opposite side is the base of my biot, and I'm just going to give it a few wraps and keep it on that side of the fly. If I do that to both of these tails, there's no way they come together. And then here's our other biot, and these are from Hareline. This is their, I believe, Kingfisher Blue. Alright, so a little guidance there on the side, just keeping that biot exactly where I want it. If it moves on me at this point, it's my own fault. So I'm going to do whatever I can to keep everything in place. So there you see, underneath, fish view and all that good stuff, split biot tails. So what I'm going to do now is carefully trim these on the butt ends so that it lines up right at the base of where we tied those weighted wire wraps, and all in the sake of an even underbody. Ta-da! So now I'm going to cheat and revisit where these tails come off, solidify with just a couple more thread wraps until you are 100% satisfied. And right there looks great. Alright, so now we've got a few elements coming in here. One is going to be some ultra wire, copper wire colored black, and this is size Brassie. And again, using that back side of those weighted wire wraps we tied in earlier, I'm going to butt up that wire so that it's touching the back side of those wraps. Again, even underbody throughout the entire fly. When you finish your fly, it will have the proper taper without gaps. Pretty cool. Alright, so there's our rib. And now I'm going to add a fun element. Instead of a typical Prince Nymph body, which is just all peacock and then some wire rib, we're going to make a tinsel version of this body. So I'm still going to tie in a piece of Peacock Herl, and I'm coming back roughly 1.5 inches. I'm going to tie this in so that the convex, or top, is facing me, or outward, and the concave, or inner side of the herl, is against the hook shank. And the reason I do this is because as I wrap, I want each of those sections to have the herl facing toward the hook point. I know it's a little bit crazy, but again, there are two sides to this. One, to catch more fish. Two, to have fun. Having fun at the vise kind of means you tie what makes you happy. Don't forget that. Alright, so now I'm coming in with some Veevus pearl tinsel. This is the size large. What I'm going to do now is tie this in near the bead, or the head of the fly. And once I've got a couple wraps there, I'll crank this down and make sure it's really solidified. And now you can kind of see we have just really deconstructed what should be a typical Prince Nymph. This is not your typical. So, just for the sake of strength in our fly, just a little bit of super glue gel, and I'm just going to smear it like that down the body. I don't need a bunch of it on here. I don't want any big clumps or any of that. This is going to really keep this tinsel in control and make our fly really strong. So at this point, I'll simply start wrapping back toward the hook point. And these wraps, I'm aiming for touching wraps, close touching wraps. I don't want to overlap at this point. If it happens though, remember, we still have to come back up. So it's not the end of the world. Be mindful of where those tails sit. And I just bumped that. See if we can come back into focus for you guys. Sorry about that. And don't worry, I'll do it again. So, at this point, that super glue that we put down kind of squeezes out as we wrap down with those touching wraps. But when we come back, we're going to do slightly overlapping wraps. A couple reasons here. It's going to make a tidier, neater body. It's utilizing that super glue gel that gets squeezed out, grabs it, and this body's not going anywhere. But the other thing, and this is key, when you're using this tinsel, if you don't have two layers, it's going to be subtle. So if you want a more subtle body that's not full of bling and look like, you know, a pupa filled with gases, well, then by all means just do one layer. But I want this thing to shine and be reflective and all that good stuff. Alright, so there is our tinsel body. Nothing to it. At this point, and anytime you're tying with flash, you can bring that tinsel back over itself once it's tied down, and you will have no chance of that slipping out after it's been eaten by a couple fish. Alright, so we're going to take this Peacock Curl, and at this point it's a little tricky. If you haven't worked with this stuff a lot, by all means be patient, don't get frustrated. And I'm simply going to start palmering, or wrapping with spaces between, as we work our way up toward the head of this fly. And I'm trying to just keep these as evenly spaced as possible, being mindful to not let that herl twist on me Again, I want all those fibers working toward the back of the fly. Why? Just for aesthetics. It makes me happy, and that's why we do it. All right, so there's our first section of the segmentation of this body, and I don't know if you can get much better segmentation than that, but we do need to strengthen that because this Peacock Herl is going to get chewed on and ripped out pretty easily. So this is where the rib comes in. Two things you can do here. You can follow the same path and go with the Herl, or you can really strengthen it and counter wrap, and that's what we're going to do now. So instead of wrapping over toward you, I'm going to come under and then toward myself, and this will create an X shape with the Herl that we just wrapped, but it's really going to solidify the whole thing. So shimmy, shimmy, shimmy that wire the whole time you're wrapping. Why? So that we can trap the fewest number of those Herl fibers as possible. All right, so I've got one more wrap here, and this is going to finish up right behind the bead, like so. Tie that off. A couple solid wraps. Pull the wire back toward the tail, much as we did with our tinsel. A couple wraps just to cover that turnaround point and trim that wire out. Now we can also come in and get rid of this Peacock Herl. Boom. And looking pretty buggy so far. Alright, so at this point we still need some thorax. We need another set of biots for the wings, and then we're going to have a hackle collar that just gives some movement and liveliness to this guy. So before we go too far here, let's turn her over and build just a tiny thread base here, and we can start putting on our wings. Now again, for the wing, typically you want something that reaches toward the end of the body as far as the length goes. And the tricky part here is we're tying on a jig, and it's going to be a little bit of, that hook point's going to come into play. So just be mindful, take your time. This first one I'm going to tie, and I'm just going to give it 1 and 2 wraps, and then I'm going to make sure that my positioning is where I want it. And this is where it gets a little tricky. So again, patience is the key. Pop that thing out where you want it, get another thread wrap and set. And there we've got a wing coming off to the side just a little bit. And so now I'm going to get my second wing tied in here, just because before we go too far with this, it's easier for me to adjust both of these before really cranking down. Alright, so now we've got one offset toward my side and one offset toward your side. And if fish are pickier than that as far as positioning of a biot wing, you just let me know and I'll have a talk with those fish. So really crank it down, biot's back, a couple wraps in front. And now you see I've created a space where I can come in, clip these biots out without disturbing the wing that we've already tied in. And if there's a little lip here, I'm not going to be too stressed on that because we've still got more stuff to add. So we're going to cover all of that up. Alright, flipping her over, and at this point I do have a purple Grizzly feather, and this is from a Rooster saddle. You don't need a ton of it, so all we're trying to do here, again, give a little fun in that collar area. Make sure you solidify that, tie it back just a touch, and before we go too far, trim out the little tag end here. There we go, like so. And now I'll just work my way with 1 or 2 wraps back up to right behind the bead and turn this over. So now you can see nothing's in my way. The feather's ready for me when I'm ready, but it's not in my way while I finish off this thorax. And of course this wouldn't be a fly from spawn without a little spawn Simi seal. And this is one of the newly released colors. This happens to be Moon Rocks, and it does rock. So if you don't have yours yet, now's the time. Get some. You won't be you won't be mad that you got it, because boy is it's fishy. Alright, a little thread, or a noodle on our thread there. That's a little bit much. We'll adjust as we go. If we need more, we can always add more. Alright, zip that up like so, and we're just going to wrap back a couple wraps, and then we'll work our way back forward, and you see nothing crazy. It's buggy on its own because we didn't sit there and over tighten all that dubbing. If you want, at this point, you could surely pick some out, hit it with a little brush, whatever it needs. I'm just going to simply turn it over. Again, here, let's get back to this hackle. So I'm going to brush that hackle back and get a thread wrap in front. Now when I do my hackle, it's not going to catch in the thread, any of that craziness. We're just going to take a wrap, and I think one more. So it comes out to roughly 1.82 wraps of a hackle is just perfect. If you get 1.83, that's fine too. Alright, couple wraps, solidify our magic clamp here that is built into our hand, and ta-da, nothing's moving on that bad boy. Get in there with your scissors, carefully trim out that hackle. A couple more thread wraps just to clean everything up, and we are ready for a whip finish. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Bingo. And let's do one more, because this thing is going to get smashed. Alright, nothing to it. Everybody with me so far? Great. And carefully trim out that thread. So as you can see, some of that dubbing is just kind of going crazy on its own, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Let's do this right and hit this with a little head cement. Something tells me we might have to shut the shop down about 10 minutes early today and go catch some fish. And this will definitely do it. Alright. Just a little head cement on all those thread wraps, and again we're utilizing the shape of our bead to help us get in there without throwing a bunch of head cement on those hackle fibers. Hackle fibers don't move nearly as well when they get a big clump of head cement on them. And there you have it, folks, the deconstructed Tinsel Prince, a body similar to what you might see on a Bloody Mary, some blue tails and wings, just because blue catches fish like crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Tie along, maybe fill a box or two with these, because they are so crucial to catching a ton of fish. So as always, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the water.